I think a lot of people are surprised of the continued rise in interest rates, but there's a lot of factors that are behind this. And this is probably why I find the long wave so fascinating. A lot of us are experiencing times that we've never seen before in our lives. I mean, we had inflation in the 70s, but house prices were normal and wages and real wages were rising. So we were able to sustain the price increases. Well, everything's different today. Today, a lot of the issue has to do with stagnant real wages. And the underlying issue is really the fiat monetary system that needs perpetual increase in debt. Now, some people are alluding to this as capitalism. It has nothing to do with capitalism, right? In a true sense, capitalism died in 71 in that it was savings and investment, right? And it was cyclical and evolutionary, as Kondratiev and Schumpeter discovered. This Keynesian philosophy is going to end really badly, simply as a perpetual need for inflation and exponential rise in credit. And that worked up until 2020, 21, when interest rates fell for 40 years. But now the reverse is unwinding, and there's an underlying issue with higher interest rates. Now, if we look at Canada and we look at the 3-month T-bill, I mean, take a look at here that the current interest rate is where it was all the way back in 2001. I mean, there's some young people who've never experienced interest rates this high. And also, you look at we ran this experiment with record low interest rates, and it hit the zero bound in 2022 before it started to skyrocket. So, what did people naturally do? They leveraged. I mean, historically, that's an opportunity to pay down debt, but in a economy based on consumption and credit and cheap credit, we made a mistake collectively. So we're going to repeat the mistakes of the past. And, with credit inflation, we get credit deflation or debt deflation. That's what's coming. Now, if we look at the 5-year rate, we're starting to see rates now creep up even to new highs. Like you notice that I have a line in the sand, so to speak, of the Kuznets real estate peak in 2024. That's when the millennial demand peaks, and there's another story. But this chart, what I love about it is there's a story, right? Okay, so let me explain what's the story behind here. So first of all, this is where most of the mortgages are linked to, and unlike United States, as we're all aware of now, since that break of a year ago, interest rates are resetting at a higher level. And this has caused a lot of stress on consumers. And then you add on food inflation. We have the worst of all possible worlds. But we see the monetary down wave, ended where we saw interest rates, right? This is in a logarithmic chart. So it illustrates very clearly the fall in interest rates. And then this fell in this beautiful channel, right? It's just like, the market put these lines in there. I didn't put the lines in there. I just attached, points of interest. Like trend lines, the lesson of trend lines is the more points that it hits, the more relevant the trend line. Does that make sense? So that you're able to see a trend, and if a trend changes, and we see that top end was always a force preventing interest rates or where interest rates will stop. And then we broke through it in late 2021. And then in 2022, we broke the long term trend and we're still heading up. That red, uh, almost vertical line peaks in 2024. And this is just the business cycle where we should see inflation continue to rise probably for another year. And again, that will only set the course for a recession, a hard landing for real estate. So the Kuznets real estate cycle is in Canada, particular to a generational 18 to 25-year cycle, right? We saw the baby boomer cycle peaked in 91, but the actual peak in real estate was in 89. Looks like the same thing is going to happen here. there's a possibility we can have a double top in 2024. Highly unlikely simply because of the interest rates are just killing demand. It's just puts the acid bubble out of reach of most people. So I'll be keeping an eye on this chart in the future. Now, here's the reality, and here's something to chart that I got off the internet. And now there's actually two long waves here, but for reference sake, the current Kondratiev cycle started in 1946. And you can see here that we've had a secular slowing. And if you extrapolate this, which I have, then by the 2030s, there'll be no economic growth. This is a Kondratiev cycle because in simplicity, the each wave is driven by technological revolutions, which creates productivity and real wealth. And we're on the verge now of this next information revolution that will decentralize. That's the good news, and that's the future. On the other side is that we have a massive amount of unproductive debt. That it does include real estate. I mean, it's not productive to create any kind of wealth. If anything, it creates industry. But the problem is it's indebted society. This is totally opposite capitalism. Usually we're indebted in industries to bring on a product or service that drives down its price and the adoption rate increases. Real estate is doing exactly opposite. So I don't know how people get this idea real estate is part of capitalism. It has nothing to do with it. It's a place to live, and that's it. And people have taken upon themselves to make it speculative by leverage, and that amplifies the gains. And now we're going to see it's going to amplify the losses. So I hope that makes sense. That right? Economic winter is on its way. We can't do anything about it. Society hasn't learned from history. I guess I'm still shocked as an ignorant student of history, and that by mean is that I came upon this because of my own scenario. But I'm just surprised how many people are ignorant of what's coming, yet they have access to this information revolution. Maybe it's cognitive dissonance. Maybe people just don't want to believe, or they believe the governments or central banks can stop this. They can't. They can't, right? The creative cycle is a social cycle. It's impossible to stop. So, anyways, there's the reality. We're headed in that direction. Now, as always, if you want to understand more about the Kondratiev cycle, the website will be the center focus of what um, the long wave is all about. And it's decoding the long wave, the services, the blog. It'll go in more detail. And what I'm finding, most people don't like the long form. So I'm giving you enough information, red pilling you slowly to come understand this as the long wave evolves. And then we move into economic winter, possibly next year. And it'll be very volatile because between 2024 and 2040, not sure when it will end, but that will be a period where it'll be so disruptive as it was between 1873 and 1896. It's a generation of disruption. And the same thing between 1929 46. There's two different worlds. If you think we went into fiscal irresponsibility on the part of consumption with credit in the 1920s, and what emerged in 1946 was fiscal conservative, right? Canadians, Americans, Europeans had a high savings rate, and we were creditor nations, and we were able to fund the boom. And governments going into economic winter in the 30s were fiscally prudent, unlike today. And by the way, if you think about it, that we're headed toward two options for governments. Governments are the problem this time. So they're either going to be, defaulting on this or inflating in a way and making the bond value become worthless with this more currency. So the value of the bond. A lot of people ask me why, I'd left the investment business in 2012. Many reasons. And honestly, always the first one was about my health. I had a health challenge I had to deal with, but it no longer became a win-win where I could Be successful by helping other people be successful. This what I'm doing here. It's a win-win, right? I could provide a model, and that's what the Substack account is, where you can have access to the model, and it'll just elude you to guide you through this minefield, right? We have these challenges: creative destruction, technology, political revolutions. It's a massive creative destruction. Everything is disruptive. The education system. So that's what's coming, and either you're prepared for it and you'll deal with it, or it will deal with you. That's the reality, and a lot of people are um, were ignorant of the asset bubble, and now the asset bubble is dealing with them, right? So that's the purpose of this. And with YouTube, I try to, or with the videos, I'm finding I'm laughing at myself. I should have done this at the beginning instead of starting on Twitter. I just thought it would be easier format. People are finding that this is simple and educational, and my job is to make it simple, right? I'm not here to impress academics about the long wave. Is to educate and keep it as simple as possible, with as many charts as possible, with as long-term data as possible, so it's factual, historical, and accurate. And you can see that you can't forecast the future if you haven't studied the past. Studying the past is understanding the social cycle is a combination of politics, technology, social mood, right? The all these different demographics, of course, that's really important now. But technology is the big one. And the good news about the Kondratiev cycle is that technological revolution is robust, and it will be a future video, and it's exciting. I am not pessimistic. The Malthusians and the Weffers are totally wrong. We have more than enough resources. Technical patents are at record levels. It's a great sign. So the future's bright, but it won't look like anything we've seen in the past. The world that emerges in 2040 will look like nothing today. Everything will be reformed, but that'll be a future video. Anyways, I appreciate your questions. Try to answer. I read them all. Any posts that you do, you make me think. I've got no problem. If you want to challenge the thesis, that is fine. To make a negative remark, it doesn't mean anything to me. I've studied this for 35 years. I'm pretty certain about it. But if you have some thoughts, oh, Joseph, what about this? And what I will look at it, and I have on Twitter where people have challenged me with assumptions, and the immigration or the population was an argument. When I looked at the data, it confirmed the outlook, but I wasn't looking at that data. So what I typically do is look back at Stats Canada or historical data, which you can find on the website, and to see if there's any correlation to anything that they're suggesting. The bottom line is this. This is a historic credit bubble or credit inflation. Credit inflation always ends with debt deflation, right? And to understand the concept of a sine wave, there is no exceptions in history, none, zero. Uh, What's the solution? More credit? I mean, it's the solution of the governments and the central banks is basically, oh, we don't want you to go through a withdrawal, so we're just going to give you more of what's causing you illness, but it's going to eventually kill you. It's kind of ludicrous if you think about it, but that's that's their solution. The only solution to is anything you restructure the debt, right? If you get into trouble financially, what do? You restructure debt. It's just common sense. Look, we're all adults. We make mistakes, and we own up to those mistakes. But for some reason, we don't have adults as politicians today. They're spouting anything but common sense or solutions. They're making the problems worse. Obviously, they only care about themselves. They don't care about you. If they did, they'd live within their means and wouldn't bankrupt the country. But obviously, they're doing this for a reason because they made all these promises during the boom, during the upwave, right? This is another lesson of the long wave, right? Don't make promises when the economy's booming. You had a great demographic behind you. You had a young population, but so that model doesn't work. And no, what do I say? Politician will tell the public the truth because they know the pitchforks will be headed their way. So this is where we find ourselves today. And what that means is challenging times for most, or an opportunity for those who see this eventual contraction is an opportunity to evolve as society. And this is unbelievable that a man, Kondratiev, on the websites, again, it's a picture of him, not me, that older picture. But that's the reason why I give a tip of hat to him, right? Just an old school respect that this man was died, shot and killed for dare suggestion he discovered as a communist or Marxist economist who was observing this capitalist system, this cyclical evolutionary system that only increased wealth. And we escaped from the Malthusian trap from the first Renaissance and the information revolution, which was the printing press. I just find this fascinating. That's why I do this, right? That's why to this day I see all the connections and all that. And this beautiful internet thing allows me to articulate that message and help society in a small way advance forward. So, anyways, I'm kind of rambling, but I hope you found this informative. There's going to be a lot of videos on each of the topics specifically. We'll cover the social aspect and what we're going to do, and just look at it from this way: step back and don't get caught up with all the political revolutions that's come. Just step back, be an observer, and understand that what we're going through is normal, right? If you're a student of Elliott wave or the cyclum cycle, the fourth turning, or the Kondratiev cycle, right? These are social cycles that they're fascinating. It's a reflection of us, and we're going through what has happened in the past, but we've never experienced it. And if you can do that, you'll sail through it much better than most people. It's a way of dealing with the stress. So, but I look forward to it. I'm going to show you some great charts, and that's always interesting, unique charts you've never seen somewhere. And when you see the charts on technological patents uh, at record levels, that's only good news for the future, right? Because is George Wilder's articulated, right? Wealth comes from knowledge, and he made a great point, and he was discussing that the Neanderthals, and if you think about it, even society during the medieval time, the resources were there. All this wealth that we have, or oil, gas, natural gas, or even the innovations in solar and wind and hydrogen, they were always there. But we never had the information how to access that, right? So with this internet information revolution that's still grown by 1 million people per day, it is accelerating that. That's the part that's exciting, right? We're passing on the information quicker than ever before. Uh, the amount of access to information you have with just a basic setup to the internet. And I remember as a teenager, my parents bought the Encyclopedia Britannica, and it was $1,000. That's a lot of money back in '71, and it became really uh, obsolete within a couple of years. Where if you access the internet, you have this world wide web of information. Look, I get the pessimist, right? Most of it is garbage. Of course, 80% is it's nothing. It's noise, it's entertainment, it's a whole bunch of things, right? I don't need to talk about what other things there are. But small but a significant part is a part of information that accelerates the knowledge of society. And, imagine how that's transformed in Africa, which is still growing exponentially and having access to it. I can say so much, as you can tell. The Kondratiev cycle is a fascinating observation of technology, human beings, innovation, asset bubbles, political cycles, and where it's going. And the only thing that's making it different this time is that there is a group of people wanted to fall in their direction through coercion, force, and lies. Right? The decentralized Renaissance needs no deception. It's the empowerment of you as the internet has, right? It's just empowering you with information. And this information technology that is coming through stem cells and genomics and molecular manufacturing is just a power. So we can create the local communities that benefit the people that live there. So anyways, I'm laughing at myself. You need to, right? Only because I could talk about this for hours, and I've always wanted to keep it short, and it never happens. I'm getting better at it. I'm trying. We will talk soon.